Hello and welcome. You're watching News9 live with me, Neha Khanna. On the show today, we are going to focus on an issue that the entire country has been talking about. It's a brutal murder that has shocked India. A 56-year-old man allegedly murdered his 30-year-old live-in partner in the Borivali area of Mumbai. The murder itself is not the story. It is the attempt to dispose of the body that has shocked investigators and the country at large. The accused in the case, Manoj Sane, allegedly cut his live-in partner into pieces and boiled the body parts in a pressure cooker and then fed these body parts to the stray dogs in the neighborhood. What gave away Sane was the odor coming in from the apartment. The neighbors alerted the police and they found something odd about Sane feeding the stray dogs in the area. It was something that he had recently started. The investigating officers, when they entered the apartment, discovered the mutilated and decomposing body of the victim, Saraswati Vaidya. Body parts were strewn in the kitchen and the bedroom. From where did Manoj Sane get the tip to dispose of the body by feeding it to the stray dogs? Another story that recently shook the nation's conscience was the Shraddha Valkar murder case. The body of the victim was chopped into multiple pieces, stored in a refrigerator, and later disposed of slowly in packets across deserted places in Delhi, India's national capital. In another gruesome incident, Sahil murdered a 16-year-old girl in full public glare. Sakshi was stabbed over 20 times and then bludgeoned to death with a cement slab. Sahil and the minor victim were allegedly in a relationship and had had an argument a day before the grisly murder. Let's go to a much older case, this time from the city of Bengaluru. The Shakire Khalili case. Murli Manohar Mishra, also known as Swami Shraddhanand, murdered his wife by getting her drugged and then burying her in the courtyard of her own house. What goes through the minds of these killers? What makes them so brutal in these heinous acts? Just what goes into the making of such a psychopathic mind? That is what we're going to discuss on the show today.
नयानगर पुलिस स्टेशन के जुरिडिक्शन में गीता हाईजिप करके सोसाइटी है। वहाँ पे 7वें फ्लोर 7वें मंजिल से एक फ्लैट है। वहाँ से बदबू आने का इंफॉर्मेशन लोकल पुलिस को मिला था। पुलिस स्टेशन के ऑफिसर्स और स्टाफ ने जाके वहाँ पे देखा। वहाँ से बदबू आने की जो इन्फॉर्मेशन थी वो कंफर्म की। वहाँ पे लॉक तोड़ के उन्होंने जब एंट्री किया तो किचन में बहुत सारे यूटेंसिल और बकेट में वहाँ पे चॉप किए हुए बॉडी पार्ट्स मिले हैं। उसमें बाद में इन्वेस्टिगेशन में ऐसा रिवील हो चुका था कि एक कपल था, लिव इन रिलेशन में रह रहा था उधर। उनका आइडेंटिफिकेशन हो चुका है। अक्यूज्ड को भी अरेस्ट किया गया। जो डेड बॉडी के पीसेस मिले वो एनालिसिस के लिए हमने जेजे हॉस्पिटल में भेजे है। इस घटना के आधार पर जो इन्फॉर्मेशन मिला उस बेसिस पे हमने नयानगर पुलिस स्टेशन में आईपीसी सेक्शन 302 201 के तहत मुकदमा दर्ज किया है। आगे का इन्वेस्टिगेशन सीनियर पीआर श्री वनकुटी कर रहे हैं।
ये लिव इन पार्टनर्स के साथ इन रीसेंट पास्ट ये बढ़ते जा रहे हैं ये केसेस, और मुझे लगता है सोसाइटी को सोचना चाहिए कि किस प्रकार हमें अपनी लड़कियों को बचाना है और कैसे हम सेंसिटाइज करें लोगों को कि अगर आप नहीं रहना चाहते तो आप मूव कर सकते हो। उसमें मारना जरूरी नहीं है आपको अपने पार्टनर को। और लड़कियां इसका बहुत बड़ा शिकार हो रही हैं। अभी बेंगलुरु में भी एक केस आया है, अभी न्यूज में ही आ रहा है। हम दोनों केसेस पे सो मोटो ले रहे हैं। और सोसाइटी में जो सेंसिटिविटी है वो कम होना एक दूसरे के प्रति, हम इंसानियत से थोड़ा परे जा रहे हैं, मुझे ऐसा लगता है। और इसी कारण इस तरह के ग्रोसम मर्डर्स जो हैं बढ़ते जा रहे हैं।
बहुत ही विभत्स, बहुत ही डरावनी और बहुत ही मतलब जितनी इसकी भर्त्सना की जाए वो कम है कि उसने अपनी एक तरह से बीवी मानिए, अगर लिविंग रिलेशन वगैरह रही है तो एक तरह से बीवी हो भी गई। उसको इस तरह से टुकड़ों में काट करके, यहाँ तक कि उसने लकड़ी काटने वाले आराम मशीन से जो सेल्फ होते हैं उससे काट करके उसके जो टुकड़ों को उसने, लोग तो कहते हैं कि बॉयल करके कहीं उसको डिस्ट्रॉय कर दिया वो। और उसका, उस बिल्डिंग के जो पड़ोसी लोग थे, कोई श्रीवास्तव जी थे, जब स्मेल आ रही थी 2-3 दिन से, तब उन लोगों ने नयानगर में शिकायत किया, तो नयानगर पुलिस पहुंची और मौके पे उसने इस बात को देखा। और जहां तक मेरी जानकारी है, उसमें उस ब्लड को एक काली बाल्टी में, एक नीली बाल्टी में डाला हुआ था, उसमें उसके बॉडी के पार्ट को भी रखा हुआ था। हम सरकार से या अपने शासन प्रशासन से, जुडिशरी में ये चाहते हैं कि ऐसे केसेस का मैटर 10 दिन के अंदर पुलिस चार्जशीट उसको फाइल करे और 1 महीने 2 महीने में ट्रायल कर करके जो है इस पे जो है तुरंत जो है क्विक जजमेंट दे। और ऐसा मैटर तो ये रेस साहब के जो मतलब ये क्रूरता से क्रूरतम जो है ये सजा है, इसमें करनी चाहिए, फांसी देनी ही चाहिए।
All right. So, what explains the barbarism that is involved in these murders? Absolutely horrific murders that have shocked the collective conscience of this country. And there hasn't been just one such episode, there has been a rash of such incidents in India in the recent past. What explains this? Let's try and decode that. Joining me on the show today is Dr. Deepak Raheja, a psychiatrist. Also with us is Yogita Bhayana, a women's rights activist and founder of Pari. Dr. Deepak Raheja, let me come to you. You know, we're trying to understand the mind of a brutal, barbaric killer as this man whose story has been making headlines for days together in India. Whether you talk about the Shraddha Valkar case that happened here in the national capital, the case of Sakshi and Sahil in the recent past, where the woman was stabbed multiple times and then bludgeoned to death by this man in full public view, or the case of this Mumbai man who allegedly kills his live-in partner, then chops her body into multiple pieces, cooks it in a pressure cooker, boils those body parts and feeds them to stray dogs. I mean, to even say that this is absolutely mind-boggling would be a gross understatement. You know, this is straight out of Hollywood movies that we've seen based on psychopaths. You know, one is almost reminded of movies like Silence of the Lambs and, you know, Hannibal, though those were about cannibalism. The point that I'm trying to make here is, this is not the first time we've heard of a murder, and this is certainly not the first time that we've heard of a man killing a woman he was in a relationship with. What is mind-boggling is the barbarism, the extreme cruelty that we've seen in these cases. So please explain to us, you're a psychiatrist, what, according to you, goes on in the mind of a man who first kills his partner and then treats the body in this manner?
Is obviously a man who's hugely debauched. He is sick in his head. Of course, this is a crime of, I don't even know if it's fair to call it a crime of passion, because the passion was consummated, culminated, and they were living in together. So
For
he
many
had
years,
the women
for many
with
years,
her
yes.
for many
Yes.
years. So for him to go to the extent of not just the murder, but the barbaric manner in which he butchered the body, in which he tried to boil and dispose the body, is depictive of a mind that is extremely traumatic. See, he's inflicting trauma, but there is a huge amount of dysfunction, psychopathic thinking, antisocial personality traits, and symptoms that gets him to process the guilt and living with the corpse of a woman that he loved over the 3-day period, trying his level best to butcher it in a manner and to dispose it off, is a very sick mind. And to my understanding, I don't think this originates impromptu. I don't think this is an impulsive act. When we do always a retrospective autopsy of the situation and not the person, and of course the person, but also the situation, we find that they were not just telltale signs, but gross cues that had been present in the relationship or even much earlier. And it's just that we choose to shut our eyes. I mean, the women, unfortunately, as we see, these incidences are more reported when there is a live-in situation which does not have social conformity. The woman feels like she's cut off. She's the support system is either cut off because the woman is judged, or it also suits such a perpetrator to cut all ties and let the person, the victim, live in a very, very toxic environment, which is equivalent to a encapsulated environment that he creates, which is equivalent to what we see in Stockholm syndrome. That beyond a point, then the victim starts identifying with the cause of the perpetrator. And these people classically have a Jekyll and Hyde personality. They are extremely abusive. And on another occasion, a few hours later, they'll be the extreme charmers and extremely charming, doing their level best to make their beloved feel extraordinary. And lo and behold, here is the victim, the partner, the beloved, who's totally confused, baffled in terms of what she needed to do. So the take home, the bottom line is that the communication line, the support system needs to be maintained. I think in all these cases, whether it was Shraddha Walker or it's this case or any other case, what really happens is that such a victim, I mean, such a perpetrator, classically in a manner cuts off the support system. And in the wake of no communication, no support system, living with a toxic man, a toxic relationship, when the line gets crossed, we don't even see that the line is crossed. From safety to intimidation to gross violence, which usually to begin with is no, it's verbal and it's emotionally abusive, getting to a point where this is the result, and we have to deal with the
It
loss
takes
of
the shape
life.
of such gruesome violence. You've explained some fascinating concepts to us, Doctor. Before I go across to Yogita, I need to delve a little further into some of these points that you've made. There is no doubt that support systems were missing for these women. I think you've very rightly pointed that out, whether we take the case of Shraddha Walkar or this woman in Mumbai who unfortunately was an orphan. There is no doubt that these women were in relationships with extremely toxic men. There is no doubt in my mind that the behavior these perpetrators have exhibited clearly tells us that they're psychopaths. You use two very interesting terms, that often these women end up getting trapped in these relationships as a result of what is known as the Stockholm syndrome, despite the fact that they have faced abuse in the past, maybe verbal, maybe physical, maybe mental and emotional, but they continue for whatever reasons to stay on with these men. And then, apart from the whole Stockholm syndrome business, used a very interesting term, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. A lot of these men live dual lives, have extremely duplicitous dual personalities, and therefore I want to ask you, Doctor, when there is somebody with such sociopathic and violent tendencies living in our midst, how is it that the rest of us don't even get whiff of it? The fact that, they may not necessarily be the most communicative or sociable people, but they are still living in the midst of our society. They're living amongst us, right? So how is it that, they carry on with these lives, with these secret dark lives behind closed doors, and we don't even get whiff of it? What does that say about, us as a society? Or is it really about how cleverly these individuals are able to hide that dark side of theirs?
So I think you very beautifully put. It is both the points. A, these individuals are very clever. They maintain a persona behind which the layers of darkness and toxicity is not visible to the world. They know where to let their guards down and let the demon come out, and for them to be able to exercise the control which is classical of them to really surmount in a relationship. And also, very sadly, to some extent, it is also depictive of the new face of the society where we live in, where we tend to draw lines to say that if it
Where
is
no one
not
seems to
directly
care.
bothering me, I
Yes.
will not put my hand into somebody's life. And in the wake of this autonomy that and which towards which the society is moving, we tend to shut our eyes to say, why should I be involved? I mean, the recent murder that we saw, we see that on a busy street there are people moving around when
There
this
were
man,
bystanders who
took
just
a
looked on
stone and
and then
bludgeoned,
walked past
and
as if
everybody
nothing
was
had
moving
happened, and this
around it
woman was being
just like it
bludgeoned to
was
death.
normal business. We used to hear such gory crimes in dark streets of some of the dangerous western cities where even police dreaded to go. But to hear such things happen in the new urban India is a worrying sign. It is a sign that we need to be very off, and we need to be perceptive and not just wash our hands off and put a wall to say that if it does not involve me, I would not want to be involved, because tomorrow it could be anyone. It could be somebody related to me. So we are not far if we let society progress in that manner, where we don't even care who's living next door. We don't even care if there are sounds of domestic violence. We don't even care what's happening around, and if the man or the woman is being perpetrated or exposed to any kind of abuse. So I think as a society, these are signs that we need to wake up, we need to be perceptive, and we need to not be callous and indifferent and sucked up in the world, the real, the imaginary virtual world, where it's me and my screen and my phone
And
and
it's
my
so
iPad and my
ironical, Doctor,
computer.
isn't
I
it?
don't really
And I'd
care
love
what's
to discuss this with you in greater detail in the next segment. It is so ironical that we live in this virtual world where we seem to be connected with the outside world all the time through social media. There's WhatsApp, there's Facebook, there's Instagram, there's Twitter, there's LinkedIn, what have you. And yet, fact of the matter is that today's modern life is increasingly isolating. And, I couldn't agree more with you, Doctor, when you say that, we have built these invisible walls around us. Unfortunately, we don't know in most cases who lives next door to us. We simply don't care enough. There have been instances where, let's say there's been a case of domestic violence. Somebody is aware that a woman is being battered in their neighborhood. But the attitude of most people is, let's stay away, let's stay out of it. You talked about the horrific case of Sakshi being bludgeoned to death by this man called Sahil. It happened in the presence of some 10 to 12 people who just looked on and chose to walk past. A woman was being brutally murdered right in front of their eyes. Nobody did anything to help. Let me ask Yogita Bhayana this before we delve into this entire aspect a little further. Yogita, it goes without saying that these men who've perpetrated these unspeakable crimes are toxic, they're troubled, they're psychopaths, they're brutally violent. But it's also true that in most of these cases, the victims are women. What is it, that makes women so vulnerable to this level of brutal and unimaginably barbaric violence of the kind that we've seen in these cases? A lot is being said about live-in relationships, and I am very hesitant to bring in that angle of live-in relationships, because it's almost as if we're sitting in judgment of women who choose to be in live-in relationships. And I don't want to make this discussion or debate about that at all. But a lot is being said about, oh, it's happening to women at the hands of their live-in partners. So, I don't want to question anybody's choices. But at the end of the day, does the doctor have a point when he says that the absence of support systems can be a huge problem? And maybe that is another thing that most of these women had in common?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is the answer even I would like to give. Lack of support system, social support, lack of support from the government. Suppose, okay, this girl was an orphan and she might be looking for some support from the government and she did not get. She fell into the trap of this man who was really, really much older to her, and she was vulnerable. So this is one girl, but at the same time, when we see other girls in the similar situation, so there is no support system from the family, because you are outcasted, because you chose to step out from your kind of that um, arrangement, which so-called social arrangement, and you started staying with a man, and or being in a relationship like the girl here in Sakshi in Delhi. So lack of social support, lack of support from the family, lack of support from the government, like shelter homes. Even I'll tell you, the other day also, like I was there in a shelter home, which was in a very pathetic situation. So lack of that also leads to such vulnerabilities, which we cannot deny. At the same time, I would also like to state that it is not about live-in only. I know this is, you mentioned that this debate is not about that. How many women suffer domestic violence at home? When it leads to such a level when the body is cut into pieces, and the kind of description you have given, that how he boiled it wrong,
Just come in
that's
for
not
a
the only
moment.
thing.
If I could just come in for a moment, I agree with you completely there. And that is why I'm very uncomfortable with people, tarring live-in relationships with a black brush. Because how many marriages exist in this country where women are subjected to domestic violence
Dowry deaths.
routinely?
Dowry
Right?
deaths. How many women are burnt alive in their
And dowry.
marriage?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
they are killed. We get everyday cases. Burning them alive is no less than cutting them into pieces. I mean, they kill and then cut into the pieces. Here, women is being burnt alive. I mean, in marriages. So we are not comparing, but what at the same time, it is nothing to do with living. It is only to do with vulnerability, which comes from lack of social support. I have seen so many cases, I'll tell you, where parents are calling us that our daughter was killed in a marriage, and so please send them to jail. The husband has gone to jail. The mother-in-law, father-in-law, the other people are not in jail. I said, why do you want to put them in jail? They said they were in connivance. I said, okay, so did your daughter raise red flags? They said, yes. She used to come to us, we used to send her back. I said, then I will put you also in jail, because your daughter wanted to come back to you when she was complaining that she had threat to her life, and you were telling her, go back and stay wherever you are. You are also equally into be connivance. So lack of support from the family itself. They are also equal partner, because the girl can't stay in a marriage. You cannot tell her to stay. So here the case study might be different. The women overall are vulnerable in this country because of our social fabric, because of this institution called marriage, which says that by hook or crook, once you're married, stay there, live there. And once you're in live-in relationship, because it has no legal entity, they are not protected anyhow. Even when they are protected in marriage, they are vulnerable. When they are not protected at all, they are more vulnerable. What can we say? The women are vulnerable in this country, bottom line.
Exactly. No matter what the situation, no matter what kind of relationship they may be, and therefore, Yogita, I said this at the start of my show, and I will say it again. As a woman, I will take a strong stand against anybody who argues that the problem lies with live-in relationships. No, ladies and gentlemen, the problem does not lie with live-in relationships, with the choices that a woman makes, because the worst kinds of abuse and violence also happens in marriages, as Yogita just pointed out, whether there are dowry harassment cases or cases of domestic violence, what have you. Of course, there are cases of marital rape as well, which is yet to be recognized in this country legally. as a crime. Therefore, let's not tar live-in relationships with the same brush, and let's certainly stop questioning the choices that women make. The problem here lies with the absence of support systems that women in this country need and deserve. Let me now go across to Dhanraj Vanjari, former ACP, Mumbai Police, who joins us now. Dhanraj Vanjari, there have been a rash of such horrific and mind-boggling cases of barbaric violence in this country in the recent past. The Shraddha Walkar case made headlines. It happened in India's capital. Recently, there was a case of a girl called Sakshi being stabbed multiple times and bludgeoned to death by her alleged boyfriend, and this happened in the presence of scores of people who did absolutely nothing to help, just looked on and walked past. And now there is this horrific case of this Mumbai man who's allegedly killed his live-in partner, and to dispose of the body, he decided to boil its pieces in a pressure cooker and feed it to stray dogs. So you are a former cop. I'm sure you've come across all sorts of cases of heinous crimes, barbaric crimes, all sorts of cruelty being inflicted on victims, especially women. What, according to you, explains the mind of a psychopathic killer such as this? As if it's not bad enough that you've killed the woman you've been living with for 3 years or 5 years, you then chop her body up into multiple pieces, either put it in the refrigerator or boil it in a pressure cooker, and then straight to the dogs. What does this tell us about the mindset of that man?
Mindset is definitely, as you said, it's a psychopathic mindset. But such psychopathic mindset which go to extreme cases of chopping up the pieces and boiling it up in cooker, pressure cooker and all that. This is not an accumulation of this frustrative or depressive psychology in a day or two. It might be through the years. It might be through the incidences. So now in forensic science, we have two important headings to understand this kind of criminals. Number one is cyber psychology. You can guess the psychology going through his social media and his reactions to the messages. Second, very important, is histopathological test of the person, victim, which will say that how much accumulated anger he has to just put on. Not necessarily the anger should be against a factor called women. It can be against anybody. But whenever they get a softest target to ooze out that anger, it comes in this distorted fashion. Now for police, as my experience goes, 3-4 kind of evidences are most important. Number one is circumstantial evidences that covers the blood stains and weapon and all that, which is amply available in this case. Second is technological evidence from mobile data and all other things, whatever comes. Third would be the witnesses, which now they will be speaking. As it was being told that all other factors, social factors and all that and this. So definitely we do not have a very healthy social fabric. That's why we are suffering. This is also one of the facts we cannot deny. After these three, the fourth and most important is the psychopathic analysis of the psychopath killer. Now this analysis has two angles. If he turns out to be a psychic person, law may not deal with him as a normal criminal. But that doesn't mean that he will get the benefit of law in that fashion, because such criminal living in ordinary sense in a common society is dangerous forever. So such criminal being always subjected to the punishment. And whatever been told so far in this case, definitely there was something. Now, one important factor I could draw, being a cop, my vision goes up to that whenever it was possible for a girl to understand, reportedly I was told that she is orphan. So she had support from family.
That's correct, sir.
She had no support from family. But friends or police, there are so many sites available. She should have put some sort of label, some sort of sticker on any channel, or maybe addressing to police control room or police site, anywhere, that this kind of man is there and there is a danger to my life. Maybe, may not be, or whatever it would have been the course in future, the future would have seen it. But she would have done it. That much sensitivity a woman, a girl should possess. That's the only appeal I would like to make through your channel.
Okay, I will come back to you, Dhanraj Manjari, but I believe Dr. Deepak Raheja wanted to come in here. Dr. Raheja, please go ahead.
So essentially, I couldn't agree more that I think the issues of domestic violence and the challenges that the woman goes today in today's world are very real. But at the same time, I think it would be unfair to not see such a case as rarest of rare. So I don't
Absolutely.
even think
I
it
think the
is
full
fair
force
for
of
us
the
to be
law
propagating that
needs to be
paranoia
applied
that
here.
we want
Yes.
to see all relationships with that lens and that mirror. But the police officer was so rightly saying that if you feel that you are stuck up in a relationship like that, then I think it is our responsibility to not be blinded. I mean, what really happens is that we get blinded by the charm in a manner that we fail to recognize that there is humongous support available everywhere. I think we just need to reach out, and then it is our
But
adult
let's face it,
responsibility.
doctor. Let's face it, Dr. Raheja. You say that there is plenty of support available. Yes, we can talk about helplines. We can talk about, activists like Yogita, who I know personally has helped a lot of women in distress. But, fact of the matter is, we can talk about these agencies that work with women, etc., etc. But at a societal level, there is a problem. We discussed this in the earlier segment. At a societal problem, we are dealing with a huge issue, sir, of deep-rooted apathy, callousness, an attitude that I don't care what's happening in my neighbor's house as long as it does not affect my life. That is a problem, and that is the reason why not just these women who've been victims of such horrific and unspeakable crimes, but a lot of people in general are facing growing isolation. You're a psychiatrist, so I'm sure, sir, you've come across multiple cases of how there are cases of depression growing in our society on multiple counts. But one of the biggest factors, correct me if I'm wrong, is loneliness. The fact that people do not have enough friends they can reach out to, the fact that they are lost and isolated in their own little worlds, even if they are digitally connected. In real life, they're actually very alone and isolated. Would you agree, doctor?
Yeah, I totally agree that the apathy of the society is visible. Someone may have 4,000 or 5,000 or 10,000 followers or friends on Facebook, but when it comes to real life, do we have those meaningful relationships? So what's really happening is that the difference between the real and the real world is blurring, and we fail to be perceptive that when in dire strait, our skills will not get honed up and they will not be polished to create a support system for ourselves unless we are reaching out and interacting with the real world. But when I was pointing towards these, was talking about the support, what I really meant was that this last 1 hour, this 50 minutes of the show that we've been doing, the sensitivity is so perceptive, the energy is so perceptive, and that to me also is a reflection of the empathy that the society, responsible journalists like you, are willing to accord as a give back to society. So I'm saying, even if it means, and I think that is what the gentleman, the police officer, was also pointing, that even if it means taking a radical decision, reaching out to a news channel, to, and I've seen that sensitivity emerge in the police also. I mean, though gone are the days of those imaginary myths where we said that police was not sensitive. Today, the police regularly mobilizes sensitizing training for their officers, and they are becoming a lot more sensitive to the problem of women and children. So I think the onus lies upon us is to popularize this, to reach out, and like you said, the society needs to be more aware, more sensitive, more empathetic, and
Yes.
and more not willing to, in the name of drawing that line, to say it is a democratic or
Or it's not my
lying.
problem. Yes.
It is not
The
my problem.
attitude is it's not my problem. And let's hope that these incidents are wake up calls because, like you rightly said, Doctor, I mean, we just want to believe that this is happening to somebody else. This can never happen to us. This can never happen to our loved ones. This can never happen to our friends. It can never happen to someone we know. It's always happening to somebody else who you read about in a newspaper or whose story you watch on a TV channel. But we have to wake up and realize that it could be any of us. We will discuss the role of the police in greater detail, but before that, I want to go across to Yogita Bhayana. Yogita, you are someone who has worked with a lot of women in many different kinds of situations. I know you've reached out to so many women in distress, offered help, but when you talk about cases such as this, where unfortunately there's a lot of social apathy, there seems to be very little sensitivity, very little concern among people at large. The attitude, like I said, seems to be it's somebody else's problem, not mine. The question I want to ask you is, if a woman is trapped in a situation where there are few or no support systems for whatever reasons, either because of family disapproval or, as in this case, the woman was an orphan, if you could tell us, what are the avenues that are available to such women? Where can they go? Who can they turn to for help?
Neha, unfortunately, very, very unfortunately, there are very, very less avenues. There are helpline numbers, as somebody was saying that she could have reached out to helpline numbers or police. Trust me, we reach out to 0.00001% cases. We reach out and try to help. Not even saying that we are helpful. We just try being with them. But at the same time, it's like an ocean. You need to have a full support. Unfortunately, after Nirbhaya, we thought things will change, but it didn't. The situation is still the same, and the helpline numbers are really not very dynamic as they should be. And but at the same time, till the time the infrastructure is not in place, women should speak up. They should at least raise the red flag and try doing their best. I know police will not definitely register complaint so easily, but at least they should make a try and make an attempt, and also try to share with their friends, at least where they can confine into. Like, this girl had nobody, she must be having some friends where she could have raised some alarm. Shraddha Walkar had spoken to her friends. At least, you should not leave any door, where you have not knocked. So, helpline numbers to your friends, you need to speak up about your issue. You can't suffer. Being women in this country, we learned since childhood. You being women, suppress your issues. It's part of your journey. Learn to live with it. So that myth also has to be broken. So what we do in Pari, People Against Rapes in India, when we do prevention plans, I speak to both men and women. We talk to women and only say that no kind of education will help them. We just tell them, speak up. Whenever you go through some similar situations, speak up. That's the only advice. Legal training, self-defense, all will follow later. First, you need to speak up. That confidence has to come into them. And to boys, we have a lot to tell. So we have a different training module, how to treat women, how to behave with women, sensitization, all those things. So these things have to be taken on a very mission mode kind of a situation by the governments. Unfortunately, they are not really coming forward doing all this. And NGOs like us, we have very minimum resources, and we are doing our best. But at the same time, it has to be done on a national level by the governments, so that and we need to do some kind of a training to adolescents, because I have got so many stabbing cases last year. Some girls could manage to survive. They are in a vegetative state, still there. Some could not be survived. Sakshi was not the only case. I have so many cases in Delhi itself. I can give case studies, but it is happening around us. Not every case makes a headline. So the situation is really, really bad, and we need to address them. Especially in schools, adolescent training has to be given to the girls, to the boys. But at the same time, you need to focus on the dropouts, where the boys are not going to the schools, the girls are not going to the schools. You need to also address them, because they are mingling, they are having relationships, and they are also not having that patience level, or what you call that mental health issues are there. as sir said, it must be brewing in his head for years. He wouldn't have just done it. He's a 56-year-old man, and the other boy was 21-year-old who killed Sakshi. So we need to understand, address as per the age group. It has to be done very professionally. Very professionally. Unfortunately, there is no module. People like us, we have created, but we are not given recognition. We are not taken seriously as NGOs. Honestly, I'm confessing on your channel.
It is unfortunate because we need more and more people like you. We need more agencies like yours. And for you to say that we're not taken seriously is utterly sad. Because, with the kind of society that we seem to have become, we need more support systems, not less. But let me go back to Dhanraj Vanjari at this point. Sir, let's talk about the law now. I want to ask you two questions. Number one, in your experience as a cop, did you come across many such absolutely horrific cases of unspeakable violence of the kind that we are discussing today? Is this something that's been happening for a long time, but we in the media are discussing it only now? Or, some people actually were wondering in my newsroom earlier today, is this a new phenomenon? Women's being killed and then their bodies being chopped off, because it's just so mind-boggling. So what does your experience as a cop tell you when you dealt with criminals and cases of heinous crimes and violence? What was your experience like? That's one. And two, sir, do you not believe that the full force of the law needs to be applied in such cases, and as the doctor said, that these cases definitely fit into the category of rarest of rare, and therefore these men, the perpetrators, once their guilt is proven in a court of law, deserve nothing but the maximum punishment?
You are rightly said that there was no time when such cases were not there. It was there. I had also investigated some of such gruesome crime against women.
Of course,
But
we all
the
remember the
frequency-
Tandoor murder case of the 1990s.
Yes,
I guess nobody
Tandoor
can
murder
forget
case.
that. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Now what happened? The cases are frequenting. Either of that fact, or you should be convinced of one factor, that our conscious and our media in particular got active like not before. So credit also goes to awareness in media, that even a smallest things come, it immediately comes in the Facebook, in Twitter, some or other thing goes on. It creates a sort of a sensitivity wave in the mind at large in society. Now, considering this past and today, I will not deny that in past such cases were not there, but now this psychotic or erotic factor is growing in human as such. I would not say only in women or only in men. In humans, it is growing, and because of that, these such cases are frequenting, and through media, it's coming in a more enlargement before the society, which is a good sign, I suppose. Now, if you talk about the law, let me tell you, since the time 1986, we have enacted Dowry Prevention Act. Till the time 2005, we have enacted in our parliament Domestic Violence Prevention Act. 22 legislations we have enacted to protect women and children. Making law is one thing, implementing law is another angle, and third, very important, how sensible the society at large is. Now, for example, in this case, in Sadda Walker's case, he had at least sent some applications. Those were proved in court of law as a bad conduct on behalf of the accused. So, in such case, if even she would have made some clip, as someone said that police is not sensitive or NGOs are not being addressing, why to stop their local police station? You can address SP, you can address commissioner. I have seen some tweeters who even blame the Director General of Police, Home Minister of the state, Chief Minister of the state, even Prime Minister, and even sometimes the people talk on international media. So one shouldn't remain restricted. Your job, your prima facie responsibility is to make our system sensible. If they are not, and they should be punished. Though I'm a cop, worked 35 years, I still believe that the cops who are not sensitive for such kind of issues, they should be punished. They should be punished administratively. And there are certain cases where cops has a lethargic thing where the gravity of crime has increases. The cops are also made accused therein. For example, Marine Drive's rape case in Mumbai, if you consider, he was a cop and he was arrested and punished by High Court. Now, in these, we have to understand what in totality is wrong and somewhere what's wrong. The main seedling is what? Our social and human values we forgot to respect. We do not respect the social fabric as it should have been. We do not respect the human value. And where is the provision for that? How can we repair it? Someone says that through counseling, someone says that through education, someone says that through law, someone says that through police machinery. Let us collectively think of it and let's make a proper grooming situation where the improvement come as a large improvement on society at large. One last point I would like to mention. In our society, people hardly go for psychological counseling. But I tell you, even if your vocabulary changes and you abruptly started speaking some abusive word, you need to consult your psychologist. In foreign countries, as frequently the people go for counseling, we think, हाँ मैं क्या पागल है क्या मेरे को psychologist के पास जाने को बोलता है.
It's not
इस
taken
तरीके से
seriously
लोग
enough,
react
mental health in this country. And it's so interesting. The cop on the panel is saying that. I agree with you 100%. And I'm sure the doctor on the panel will more than agree that mental health is simply not taken seriously enough in this country. You know, we don't treat it the way we treat physical ailments. If we have a physical ailment, we go to a doctor. But if there is an issue with our mental health, we tend to be dismissive about it, brush it under the carpet, not take it seriously, and in many cases, unfortunately, there is still a stigma attached to it for reasons that I cannot understand for the life of me. But Dr. Raheja, I want to ask you a different question. You know, one academic question I have for you. If you could just very briefly explain to our viewers, what is the difference between a psychopath and a sociopath? When you see such cases, how would you categorize these men? And while there is no doubt that somebody who's brutally killed another human being belongs to jail, but when we talk about the need for counseling, and sometimes this is extended in jails as well, are these kind of men practically beyond reform? You know, when you talk about a serial killer or somebody who's committed such heinous acts and then shows absolutely no remorse later, I mean, are they practically beyond reform?
So see, the basic distinction being, and that distinction would, to my mind, be theoretical because an expression, a dastardly expression like this could happen with either. One struggles to make relationships, the other tries to be to blend into society, would be a charmer, would be living a normal life, would be possibly be the man next door. Like we saw in the Nirbhaya case, these were normal men who were either vegetable vendors or the truck driver or the bus driver of a school van, So one is somebody who has to make an effort to blend with the society, is atypical, is idiosyncratic, is clumsy, maybe more visible to the people whom he lives with. The other sometime puts up a facade and is able to blend into society that sometimes even the family is not aware or is perceptive, as we see in some of the Hollywood flicks and some of the movies where the person has a private dark side which he continues to implement and cause a serial crime or a serial deviant act. What's very, very important is that whether these people are repairable, I mean, it's too demonizing or dehumanizing to say whether they are repairable. An individual always has room to be reformed, to get better. I don't think repair is the right word, but as a society, do we stand today with resources enough to talk about rehabilitation of men at large in society, whom we might even have difficulty to identify, where the whole mammoth population of mental illness which needs attention sometimes goes deprived and unnoticed? But, the responsibility of identifying. So if we say, is policing enough? to stop a crime like that? The answer is no. I mean,
Yeah.
one one Sahil will just get up and start bludgeoning somebody to death. But it is the responsibility of the family. It is the responsibility of the people whom we live with. It is also the society, the immediate close society, which would, when you dig back, you will find at place of work, in schools, in colleges, at places where they are employed, what they do, there are definitely moments where the guards go down and the demonish, devilish side comes out. So it will then be our responsibility of the immediate close circle to
Yeah.
identify these people and to be able to bring in an intervention
Okay.
at the right time. So such, discussions are implemented, they reach out, they become educative,
I guess
and
we
we
need to
can
talk to each other
prevent
more. Like you said, in so many cases, people live these dual lives where even the families are not aware. So we just have stopped talking to each other, it seems. We a lot of times don't know what's happening in our own families, what's happening in our backyard, what's happening in our neighborhoods. And really, that is something that needs to change. I'm in no position to say whether these men who've displayed, an absolutely demonic side to them are still capable of reform and rehabilitation. I don't know about that. But one thing that, of course, has to be said is that as a society, we really need to shed our apathy. We need to listen to each other more. We need to talk to each other more. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a fascinating conversation. Thank you for all your perspectives, and thanks to the viewers for watching.